So welcome to the retail method. In this video, I'm going to give you a little overview as to what's coming up in the course, how it's going to work, and a few of the basic principles that the whole method is built on. My name's Vicky, and I'm going to assume you've probably found this course through my pattern site, Twisted Angle, which I created a few years ago, basically to try and get some younger knitters interested in knitting as a craft and as a hobby and a passion, hopefully. What I do is my day job, if you like, is I'm actually a knitwear designer for the retail industry. I have worked for all of these companies and many more actually over my many years, giving away my age. But what I thought and what I came up with a few years ago, I was slightly concerned that because there was a little bit of a lack of really kind of high fashion patterns, lots of beautiful patterns, don't get me wrong, many beautiful patterns, but maybe a few that were lacking a little bit of high fashion catwalk panache, if you like, that we might be in danger of not encouraging some younger knitters to get involved. So I came up with Twisted Angle so that I can use all the principles that I do in my day job as a designer and put that into knitting patterns for people to follow. The next step seemed pretty simple. I want people to get knitting. I want people to get creating, and regardless of your style or what you like to wear, I want you to be able to create your own patterns that fit you perfectly in the yarn that you want, in the shape that you want, in the color that you want. And what I'm going to go through with you today is a little bit of background as to how the course is going to run and work, but also just to give you a little bit of information about the process behind it and why it works. So fundamentally, this course runs with all the knowledge and experience that I have in the retail world, in manufacturing. And every part of manufacturing, as you could probably guess, is to do with cost and money. And this means that we have to, whatever the design and however embellished or amazing looking that it might be when it comes out, is to create something really simple with the lowest cost possible. Everything is based around cost. Now, this works on three principles. This is how we reduce cost in manufacturing. We work on simplicity, which means using what I'm going to explain to you in the next video called a jersey block, not a woven block. It's slightly different. And we also have to reduce down the complicated elements of a garment. We have to keep the design looking as targeted, shall I say, as it needs to be. But the construction has to be simple. So we try and reduce down how complex the actual shaping and design is and the process that it goes through, which is the next part, the efficiency. We have to make sure that when we are creating patterns, when we're putting these things together, that it's really efficient, that there's nothing complicated involved, that everything goes together really easily, and all of those things are going to be reflected in the retail method for creating patterns. And the last part is using what we have to our advantage. And this is to do with the properties that you've got for you guys will be in your yarn. Now, knitted fabrics also cover jersey wear, so your average t-shirt, stretch material, jersey cotton, it's just a knitted fabric. It's a really fine gauge fabric that's been knitted on an industrial machine that's about an 18 gauge. Now, if you're not a machine knitter, it doesn't matter. Basically, if you imagine very tiny hand needles, it's basically the same equivalent. So let's go through what's actually coming up. In this course, I'm going to use those three principles to explain to you a system. It's a process which can be applied to absolutely anything. And for years, we've produced millions and millions and millions of products that you will know because you go out and buy clothes, I'm assuming, same as I do, that have been sold, worn out, remade, but they all use a very, very simple method of construction. So throughout the course, we're going to be working on simplicity, efficiency, and using the properties of our fabric. Now, don't worry if you think you have to be a machine knitter for this. No, not at all. What I'm going to teach you is a process, the little steps that you go through to create your pattern. And that is regardless of whether you're a hand knitter, machine knitter. You can use any yarn weight that you want, any yarn type that you want, any size pattern, and any shape. And don't forget that doesn't restrict you to clothing either. This can be anything that you want to cover. Think of the body as an object that you're trying to cover up. Same as you would if you were yarn bombing a tree. You're basically yarn bombing your body with a pattern. So this system can be used for any shape, any design, any product, anything basically that you want to create as a knitting pattern, because the system is the same regardless. Now, these are a few pictures of some patterns that I've done for Twisted over the last few years, and as you can see, some of them are machine knitted, some of them are hand knitted. They use different yarns, different weights, some have got colour work, some have got shaping bits in there. The whole process that I go through when I create each and every one of my patterns for Twisted is the retail method. So you can see that it's really, really versatile for anybody to use. So you're probably wondering how the whole system's going to work, and I'm going to tell you right now. Firstly, we're going to go through an example of a pattern together. I've put together lots of sheets for you that you can work through, and we're going to go through a series of videos covering a pattern from start to finish together. So I'm going to explain all the maths and bits and pieces that go into a pattern as we work through the whole process. Now, for this particular course, we're going to look at women, and that's not because I don't want to do one for men, but if you are a guy or you're knitting for men, you can do this course as well, because a woman obviously has certain lovely round bits that we have to consider, and women are the hardest shape to fit perfectly to when we're creating a pattern. So if you know how to do a woman's body, you'll be able to do a man's body really easily, because you just take out a few of the measurements. Similar for kids. And like I said, any other product. It can be furnishings or anything else. So we're going to go through, in a nutshell, what the system is. We've got our measurements that we're going to go through in the next section. And that's the first part of creating a pattern. Then we're going to look at a little bit of prep, which is basically your tension square. Then we're going to do a little bit of maths and convert all the bits and pieces that we've already got, the measurements and the tension square, and put it into what I call a knitting rule. And all of these knitting rules go together to create your pattern. And actually, the biggest part of this is just doing a little bit of maths and putting together the knitting rules. Now, don't worry, the maths is not complicated. It's very, very simply some adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying. And I would suggest grabbing a calculator, because some of the numbers will come up as decimals. And although the maths is not complicated, I wouldn't want to be doing all those decimals in my head either. So I would definitely suggest a calculator, but it doesn't have to be anything complicated at all. So the course is divided up into 5 video sections, and you're actually in section 1 now, the introduction. There's going to be a second video in the introduction called the knitting block, and I'm just going to throw that in there just for the people who'd like to get a bit of background information on how the whole course works. We're going to cover what's called the knitting block, and that's a little bit different from a woven block that most people would use to create patterns for woven fabric. We're interested in the knitting block, or what's technically known as the jersey block, because we're using knitted fabrics. The next section after that is measurements, and even if you know how to do this, I would still recommend going through the video and having a look at all the details in there, mainly because when you're looking at websites online, or you might have gone to a course for making clothes, or even if you're just a really passionate clothing designer or maker, there are a few little differences in the way we do things in retail to a lot of the information that you'll find in books and on the internet. So I would still really recommend sitting through that little section, that video. Then we've got the prep, and again, this covers the tension square, but I would suggest, it's a very quick video, I would still suggest sitting through it and having a look at it, because unlike a lot of patterns that you'll find for knitting, again, the retail method just measures them a little bit differently. So you might just want to have a quick little look through that and just get to grips with a slight change. Then we're going to go through the pattern, and the pattern has a number of different videos. This is the place we're going to work through the pattern together. And each video has a little break in there, and you're going to fill out a sheet as we go through. I'm going to explain all the maths, I'm going to explain all the changes and how things are going to happen. And then I'm going to give you a chance, by stopping the video, to just practice a little bit on your own. And then in the next video, we'll go through the answers just to make sure that everybody is following along and we're all understanding everything and making sure that everything's right. Then the last section we've got is the details. Now, in the pattern section, we're looking at the outside of the body, the shaping on the outside. The details is to do with anything that's inside or external. So this means necklines, sleeves, changes in tension and using different yarns or different stitches, things like that. So we're going to cover all of those parts in the detail section. So thanks for watching the introduction video to the retail method. For those of you who've already signed up, your next step is going to be looking at the video for the knitting block, which is just a little bit more background on how the entire retail method works, the principles behind it. For those of you who haven't signed up for the course, I'm really sorry, but you'll have to sign up to get the rest of the content of this course. And you can do that by visiting the webpage at twistedangle.co.uk. I will see you in the next video.